the password that shouldn't have been mine. I met Alina on a Tuesday that smelled like burnt coffee and printer toner, the kind of office day that rubs itself raw against your nerves and calls it productivity. She was the new head of partnerships, glossy hair, thin gold chain at her throat, an accent that lifted the ends of sentences as if offering them as gifts. Men drifted past her desk when they didn't need to, bearing questions with answers they already knew. I told myself I wasn't one of them. I told myself a lot of things that week. I'm Artem, 36, head of product at a fintech startup that pretended it was still a garage company even though our servers ate entire floors. I was good at defense, risk mitigation, clean UIs, telling investors what they wanted to hear without lying outright. If you asked my friends, they'd say I'm loyal, maybe to a fault. If you asked my ex, she'd say loyalty is a moat you build so no one can get close enough to see what's inside. The first time Alina looked up at me over her monitor, I felt my face perform all the expressions I try to keep on a leash: surprise, curiosity, heat. She smiled like she'd been waiting for me to be interesting. "Can you help me with access?" she asked. "They gave me logins, but the dashboard keeps telling me it doesn't recognize my device." I stood too close behind her chair, breathing citrus from her hair, and told myself to step back. She typed slowly, deliberate keystrokes, nails tapping like soft metronomes. On her screen, the admin console begged for two-factor verification. "Here," I said, opening an internal tool I built during a sleepless summer to bypass an onboarding glitch. "Temporary override, but you'll need your manager's approval." She turned the chair face level with my chest. "You're my manager for this," she said lightly. "Everyone said you know things before they happen." "I hope they didn't call me a prophet," I said. "I'm just neurotic." Elena laughed. Her eyes held mine a half-second too long. All the heat that hadn't left my body uncoiled and elected to stay. In a company of open spaces and glass, there are few doors that matter. One was our CEO's office with the frosted pane and the permanently ajar policy. Another was a server room that hummed like a sleeping animal. The third was the small conference room by the copy machines, War Room 3, a place where strategy went to either sharpen or bleed. Alina started scheduling late meetings there under the pretext of preparing a partner pitch. I told myself I was helping. I drew lines on whiteboards, spirals of arrows that became hypotheses, trajectories, margins. She listened like the numbers could tell us a secret if we were quiet long enough. Sometimes she'd ask, "What if we press this lever just a little further?" And I would tell her where the system might bend and where it would break. One night, after we packed up, she touched my wrist. The shock was disproportionate to the gesture. We didn't kiss then. We didn't do anything you could screenshot. But on the way out, she said, "I'm glad you're divorced." I never said that. Her smile twitched. "You wear it like a cologne." She wasn't wrong. The brand is something between loss and resilience, notes of endurance, hints of regret. The intrigue began with a password. Not mine. Not hers. A short string folded into a longer one, like a coded nickname inside a birthday. We were building a new product line that would let small merchants settle cross-border payments in near real time, and somewhere in those early tests our security logs recorded a login from an odd angle. The right credentials, the wrong time, the wrong device ID. I'd set up anomaly flags months ago, the kind of paranoid tripwires that crowd your inbox in the beginning and then fall silent once you calibrate them. This one didn't trip a red alarm. It nudged, polite. I noticed because I was up late, staring at a spreadsheet that refused to confess its insights. I followed the breadcrumb trail into a subdirectory no one outside my team should know existed. /partner sandbox/ups/. It held mirrored transactions from our test merchants, payloads stripped of personal data but still pregnant with patterns. Nothing was wrong. Everything looked right. Too right. On a hunch, I created a phantom merchant, Pomegranate Books, a fictional shop with an IP address that mapped to our office. 2 hours later, the IP that had made the odd login request pinged my phantom merchant and attempted to force a reconciliation. That's when I realized the password belonged to someone on our executive team. Not Alina. Not me. I couldn't say whose. Our system stored salted hashes, names divorced from the strings that unlocked them. But the metadata narrowed it down. A phone carrier shared by 3 people, a geolocation that hovered over a neighborhood where 2 of them lived, and a usage pattern that felt like one man trying to be 2 people at once. I told myself to report it. I told myself to run it down privately first so I wouldn't look alarmist. I told myself to trust the part of me that kept the lights on when storms rolled in over the city and the Wi-Fi hiccuped. I told Elena nothing. But secrets have heat the way laptops do, slowly warming a room until you realize you're sweating. We were in War Room 3 again, drawing a triangle of fees on the whiteboard, merchant, partner, us, and arguing about who should pay the costs we could massage but not erase. She leaned over the table, her blouse gaping enough to distract, and said, "I think you enjoy proving me wrong." "I enjoy accuracy," I said. "It's not personal." "I want it to be sometimes," she said softly. We held each other's gaze the way you do when you've already made a decision and you're just waiting for your body to catch up. But then she stepped back and capped the marker. "Can I ask you something not entirely related to this?" "Ask," I said, throat dry. "When you did my access override, did you see anything you shouldn't have?" "Yes," I said before I could shape the deflection. "I saw a person who was going to change the way we do business." She smiled at the compliment shaped like a dodge. "And nothing else. If you're asking whether I snooped in your personal files, I didn't." She studied me like a code block. "Good," she said, but it landed like less than good. After she left, I pulled the logs again. The anomalous IP had tried my phantom merchant a second time, this one less careful, too few hops, a slightly different user agent, as if the person operating it were tired or confident or both. I copied the full header, then stopped. This wasn't a bug in the system. It was a human testing a boundary, and humans don't fit neatly into JIRA tickets. I closed my laptop and took the long way home. At midnight, my phone lit with a message from an unknown number. "Pomegranates are in season." I stared at it, something like laughter rising from my ribs. I answered, "Depends who's picking." A bubble appeared, vanished, returned. "War Room 3, now." I told myself not to go. I put on my shoes. Security had already turned off half the lights. The office hummed like an aquarium. War Room 3's glass helped it pretend to be private. Elena was there alone, a jacket over a silk camisole that looked flimsy under fluorescent glare. She closed the door, not that it mattered. "We have a problem," she said. "Which one?" "The kind that gets people fired." She pressed a hand flat to the table. The vein in her wrist tracked like a river on a map. "You set up a trap." "I set up a test." "You used a dead merchant named Pomegranate Books." "I did." "Someone tried to reconcile it." "Yes." Her eyes flickered with something like relief and panic married. "I want you to stop looking." "You're going to need a better reason." "Because it was me." That wasn't the answer I expected, and yet some muscle in me relaxed, as if the threat had converted into a different shape, one I knew how to hold. "You don't have executive credentials," I said evenly. She gave me a look I didn't recognize, a look that asked how much of the world I wanted to keep believing in. I do when our COO gives them to me. Our COO was Ruslan, a man who wore crisp shirts too tight around the biceps, who called everyone champ to be friendly and to avoid learning their names. Married, 2 kids, house by the river. He liked to stand with his hands on the back of a chair, fingers spread, like a general over a map. I had never seen him do anything unclean, but cleanliness in business often means hiding the dirt well. Why would he? I started. Because we're testing things we can't test in the open, she said quickly. Because partners want proof we can settle edge cases we shouldn't be able to settle. Because sometimes to win a negotiation you have to show you can deliver something extra. And you couldn't have told me. He told me not to, she said. He said you, object. He said you'd make a case about ethics and compliance and we'd lose the deal. He said if I wanted to prove I could operate at his level I'd need to do it quietly. She looked at me almost shyly, as though she wanted me to be proud. I was careful, but you're carefuler. Carefuler is not a word, I said, because I needed to steady the ground. Show me the terms. She shook her head. I can't, NDAs. If this goes sideways, I need plausible deniability. You just admitted it was you. Only to you, she said, and only because I need your help. In any other version of my life, I would have walked out and written a report so clean it could have gone in a textbook. But in this version, Alina stepped closer, and my body remembered how I had wanted her and why I had pretended I didn't. Please, she said, if this leaks before we ink the partnership, I'll be done, and he'll make sure it looks like I acted alone. Maybe this was the moment I cheated, not just on rules but on myself, on the man who builds moats and says they're for safety. I said, I'll help you, but on conditions. She tilted her head. Name them. Full visibility on whatever you and Ruslan are doing. Guardrails I set. One more thing. What? You stop using his credentials. Her smile turned rueful. That one might be hard. It's the only one I won't negotiate. Alina touched my sleeve, fingers cool. Okay, Artem, she said. Okay. We moved closer, orbit lines collapsing. Her mouth hovered near mine, hesitation like static before a song. When we kissed, it wasn't a firework. It was a match lit in a dark room, small, bright, enough to change the meaning of shadows. We were not careful enough. Or maybe we were as careful as 2 people can be in a glass room with a camera in the corner that technically points at the hallway but catches reflections like gossip. The next morning, security sent me a time-coded clip with an accompanying note. Not sure if this is a concern. You could see me and Alina as silhouettes sliding into each other, warped by glass, time-stamped 0054. It didn't prove anything, but it made everything obvious. I deleted nothing. I replied with a thanks. I walked straight to Ruslan's office and closed the door without asking. He looked up, smile calibrated to 60% charm. Champ, he said, everything okay? No, I said. We need to talk about the partner sandbox. He frowned a practiced frown. Technical issues. Human ones. He glanced at the glass at the floor, then leaned back. Shoot. I laid out the sequence, the anomalous IP, the phantom merchant, the forced reconciling, the ethics of sandboxes, and the law. I didn't say Alina's name until the last possible second. I wanted him to admit it first. He didn't flinch. I asked her to stress test the system, he said. Your team's too slow. I needed data. You gave her executive credentials. I gave her a path to win, he said. You know how this works. Partners don't care about what we can do on a sunny day. They care about what we do in a storm. You put the company at risk. He shrugged. Risk is another word for price. Every win costs something. I thought of Alina in War Room 3, asking me to collude on a secret with consequences that could take my career and grind it into powder. I thought of all the ways I had been careful until the moment I was. If you drag her down with you, I said, I'll bury you before you hit the ground. For a heartbeat, he looked impressed. You're sleeping with her, he said mildly. That's either a terrible choice or a fantastic one, depending on your appetite for heat. I'm protecting my team, I said, which was true and not the whole truth. Ending this now. He raised his hands in faux surrender. We're 3 days from signatures, he said. You blow this up today and you kill the deal. And if the board asks who killed it, I'll say your name first. He was right and he was wrong, and he was powerful enough to make right and wrong feel like locations on a map he drew. I walked out and went to War Room 3 and stared at our whiteboard triangle. Merchant, partner us. Someone always pays. That afternoon, I did something I'm not proud of. I pulled a report I wasn't supposed to have the authority to pull. Full access logs for the last 14 days, cross-referenced against endpoint signatures. The pattern that emerged wasn't just Alina. It was Ruslan in 3 different skins, logging from home and office, and a third place that lived behind a VPN called Lilac. It was Alina once, twice, then stopping. There the timeline matched what she told me. It was also, unexpectedly, another set of credentials, one I knew intimately. Mine. My stomach fell like a glass off a counter. I rechecked the hashes, recalculated. The system insisted. My credentials had authorized 2 midnight accesses to the partner sandbox from a device that wasn't mine. That's when the betrayal changed shape again. Someone had my password. Someone had skinned me. I replaced my password immediately, shuffled keys, revoked tokens, reset every piece of security I controlled. Then I went to Alina. There's more, I said without hello. He used me. Her face drained. Artem. I'm fine, I can fix my side, but you need to decide what you are. What I am. Are you his spy or mine? Or my own, she said, voice small. I could live with that, I said. Can you? She looked at the glass wall, at the office beyond it, at the reflection of us side by side like a question with 2 answers. I didn't come here to be someone's pawn, she said. I came here to win. Then let's win. The plan was simple and shabby, the way ethical plans often are. We would document, we would escalate, we would aim for truth instead of victory. We pulled artifacts, the logs, the IPs, the browser fingerprints. We laid them out like cards in a game no one wants to learn. When we went to the CEO, I spoke first, dry as a manual. Alina spoke second, words precise and cool. She did not mention the kiss. Neither did I. She almost reached for my hand once, then remembered we were playing for our lives. By evening, Ruslan was not in his office. By morning, HR sent a calendar invite with a subject line that didn't say investigation, but meant it. By the end of the week, he was gone with a statement that used the phrase mutual separation like a bandage. He left behind an email written at 3 a.m. that said, in essence, the world rewards aggression, and he had only tried to give it what it wants. Alina got promoted. I got insomnia. We didn't become lovers the way you'd expect. Those nights in War Room 3 turned into later nights where we were either too tired or too careful to do anything but hold each other's eyes. Sometimes she'd press her palm to my chest and say, still there. And I'd say, still, and that would be enough. Other times, when the office emptied and the glass stopped pretending to be walls, she would lean in and we'd kiss with a restraint that amplified everything it denied. YouTube safe, I joked once against her mouth, and she laughed. and the sound made me want to burn something and build something else with the ashes. I found the last betrayal a month later, hidden like a splinter you don't feel until you bump the table just right. We were celebrating a new partnership, legit, signed, audited, when a partner rep, drunk on champagne and triumph, told a story about an aggressive negotiation technique he'd learned from your last guy. The story involved a credential passed under the table like a favor. He said the name casually. It was Ruslin's. It was Alina's. I finished my drink and went outside. The night had teeth. The city smelled like rain that wouldn't come. When Alina found me, I asked, "When did you stop?" She didn't ask, "Stop what?" She looked up at the slice of moon and said, "When you told me to." "You started before," I said, "before me." She nodded. I wanted to win. I wanted to tell her ethics are not retroactive. I wanted to tell her I forgave her and mean it. I wanted to know if the password she used to open doors that weren't hers had ever been my name. Instead, I said, "And now?" "Now," she said, taking my hand, "I want to win with you." We didn't go back to the party. We walked the city, not touching more than the occasional brush of fingers, not saying more than we needed to. Under a yellow streetlight, she turned and asked, "Do you think we're the good guys?" "I think good is a map that's always redrawn," I said. "Tonight we're on the right side of the river." She smiled. "Then let's stay there." Back at my apartment, we kissed like we were mapping a room in the dark with only our mouths to guide us. We took our time, stepping up to the edge of fire without letting it spread. Her thigh pressed mine, the silk of her dress a whisper between us. My breath made the chain at her throat tremble. We let the heat exist without numbing it, the way you let a secret warm you without taking it apart to see how it works. In the quiet after, she lay with her head on my shoulder and said, "I still have that number you used to message me." "The one that texted about pomegranates?" I asked. She nodded. "You never asked how I got it." "I figured you found a way." "I always do," she said. Then very softly, we both did. The next morning the office behaved itself. No alarms, no anomalies, logs clean enough to eat off. Elena passed my desk and tilted her coffee cup in a salute that meant more than morning. I tilted mine back. Somewhere a door we hadn't known to lock clicked shut on the far side of the floor. It would open again. They always do. But for now, we had built a river and set ourselves on the right bank, and the current ran in a direction that felt like truth. When I returned to my terminal, a new message waited in the admin console. Security policy update. Password rotation required. I laughed out loud, alone at my desk. I picked a password I hadn't used before, something that wasn't a date or a name or a dream. I didn't write it down. It lived where secrets sometimes should, on the tongue, tasted for a second, then swallowed. 2 weeks later, Alina sent me a calendar invite. War Room 3. Late. I accepted without reading the agenda. When I arrived, the whiteboard was blank. She stood in front of it, marker in hand, and drew a triangle again. Merchant, partner, us. She capped the marker and turned. "Who pays this time?" she asked. "We do," I said, "but not with the currency they expect." We didn't kiss. We stood very close and talked about terms, about leverage, about how to say no with a yes-shaped mouth. When we left, she brushed her fingers along the inside of my wrist, and the contact was more electric than anything that would have gotten us caught on camera. On the way out, I looked back at the glass room, at our reflections layered over the blank triangle, and thought, betrayal is often a story told too late. But sometimes, if you're lucky, intrigue is what keeps you looking early. And love, if that's even the word, is the part that teaches you which doors to close and which ones to open with a password that should always belong to you. I walked her to the elevator. She pressed the button, then the flat of her palm to my chest, that familiar test. Still there. Still, I said. The doors parted. Inside, the mirrored walls held a dozen versions of us. Careful, reckless, optimistic, tired. We stepped in anyway, and the elevator began to move.